we're people. You and I, we're just people, you know, with some different backgrounds, but actually we're people trying to understand each other and move forward, whatever it is we've got to move forward. And
Welcome to Fika's Focus. Voices leading change.
All right, kia ora, Andrea. We are very excited to have you here. I was lucky to meet you up at our marae visit, and obviously I've known Spence for a couple of years, but to meet his better half, it's always a privilege. So welcome to our podcast.
oh, kia ora, Ray. Thank you.
Let's talk about who you are, where you're from, as is important to all of our whānau. What do you let us know about that?
Yeah, I'm born and bred here in Tauranga, well, Matapihi. So I'm Ngai Tū Kairangi and Ngāti he. I'm one of 3 children. My mum's from here, my dad's from up north. Both my parents were disabled, so that sort of has definitely helped to form me and my directions moving forward. I raise that now just because what I'm doing now is giving back to the disabled community. That's it seems to be a part of me. I've sort of identified areas of my life that have really contributed to, you know, developing the person that I am. And so one of the things I do in the governance space is work for the Disabilities Resource Trust.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
and I went that way purely because of my, you know, my lived experience and my ability to understand, you know, life for people with disabilities.
Interesting, because I worked when I was at uni, I worked for Community Living Trust, which was a funder in from the Disability Trust. And, I learnt a lot myself personally there, working with people with intellectual disability, and it actually really stood me in. It gave me great standing when going into my teaching education, because a lot of us new graduates hadn't heard of ADHD, autism especially. It wasn't, unless you'd watched The Rain Man, you didn't know about it. But because I'd worked with clients in that space, I actually got to get a very deep understanding for the challenges and needs, and understanding their rights as humans, and to access what we deem as normal, for them, and also feeling the mamae from the family. I think that was probably one of my biggest eye-openers, is just their realisation that their son or daughter will not access to the normal milestones that we all take for granted. Isn't that cool? There's a little correlation there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And actually, it's part of the crusade for us too in this space, is for our tamariki that have neurodiversity or have disability needs, that they actually have exactly the same access to things that atypical children, normal children get access to.
Oh, I love that. Yeah,
so how long have you been working in that space then?
I've been on the board, so in a governance capacity, just for 2 years.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, but I've come through life, living with both parents who had disabilities, and now I've got an overabundance of empathy for all people that are, having a struggle, whatever the struggle might be. Yeah, it certainly led me into, I guess, a number of the different avenues that I've become involved in, because I have a high social justice lens to me.
The disability space too the landscape has changed drastically in the last, even since my time in education, when I started in 2004 to what it is today. There is a lot more spotlight on it. I think maybe social media is to do with it, but I don't know. But also, what I'm finding in this space is, I am seeing sometimes a pattern of people losing empathy and curiosity towards, because if a child is in a wheelchair, it's easier to see.
Yes.
Or they're impaired with a physical, some sort of impairment in that space that does hinder their access to the curriculum. We can see that, but now a lot of the disabilities that we're seeing, they're hard. You don't see it.
I agree. so, because I've got 7 children, well, I'm being responsible for 7 children, you treat every child, as their own person, and I tend to accept my children for what they bring. But
and Spencer.
all of the above.
Yeah.
But as I've grown and they've grown, I've come to realise that what I've accepted as just normal parts of them have actually been symptoms and signs of their neurodiversity. And actually, as teenage children now, I've got older teenage children, they're teaching me now about the signs that I may have missed when they were young and growing up, and I just attributed those to, that's just how Mace is, or that's just how Amor deals with things, and not really seen it and through a disability lens. So it's come full circle. So I'm someone who I think is quite aware of, people and where my children are at, but I've learnt that it's quite easy to miss those signs, because they are relatively normal signs, but don't always get picked up, because, in my view, I just accepted them for who they were.
And I think in that space where education still has a lot to work on is the acceptance of a certain level of... and we're working hard in that space ourselves, and it is, and it's all relative too, because, I grew up in Tokoroa, where the kids went to a special school, and now that I think through that, I think to myself, I understand some of the psyche around it. I don't know if I agree with it. I don't agree with it. But also, it's what we're not doing is building capacity for our teaching team to actually understand that, and the needs and the ability to actually not only deal but help that child thrive.
Yeah, well, I would say not only the teaching team but also the parenting team.
Yes,
and then probably society as a whole. We've not necessarily seen, these children with behaviours the way we should have. Possibly just given them different labels, because that's what we referred to.
We meet them early.
Yeah, you do.
Right, we meet them early. I know that, the children I met, they were minimum 5, and they presented quite high in those needs spaces.
Yeah.
But we can see them. We see them often from 6 months.
Yes.
So we've got quite a big runway with them.
Oh, I love that, because actually most of the issues I'd imagine that we have as a society, if we caught them a lot earlier, if we observed in them at that stage and we got in behind trying to help them, life would possibly look a lot different for people.
So on your role in the governance space, what's some of the real typical challenges? I mean, we're obviously talking about access as being a major piece, and we're not just talking about physical access, but access to what we deem as normal.
Yeah.
But what are some of the issues you're seeing in that governance space that still doesn't seem to have made any progress?
Yeah, in my view, the key in the governance space, when we're having to consider and respond to, the things that are happening to people on the ground, is to actually be able to utilise that space as a vehicle to address those things. And it's not a simple process and not well utilised. So the tools of governance should be available to you when you see those issues in your community and you're governing in a disability space, that you're trying to drive your strategy so that it picks up the areas that need focus on. And so to do that, you need that good relationship with your management, or your key drivers, your CEO, or your management. So I think it's about having great relationships at that level and being able to drive the strategy to pick up the students that are, being failed in different ways in the system, and holding people to account. So the key work of governance is to observe, the issues, consider how you can best drive those issues to get the results you're seeking, and doing it through the relationship with your management so that everyone's on board driving those issues. I think one of the keys to that is being able to monitor and review ongoing, and that tends to be, a lesser of a priority in some governance structures so we're not following through and holding people to account.
Is it a public structure that you're under?
No.
A charitable structure?
It's a charitable structure.
So I hear what you're saying, because I think to myself, and this is just me thinking out loud now that the kōrero is happening. If I say to you, right now there's a whole bunch of money accessible for disability services and support services to help increase the probability of success and access, then it starts it off in my mind the wrong way, because they're like, right, cool, I can access funding, versus accessing skills, knowledge, and execution of a strategy that has clarity around the rights and roles and opportunities for disabled people.
Yeah.
Because my first thing is, right, cool, I can access funding.
Yeah.
That's great, but as soon as the funding dries up and disappears, people back off. Is that fair?
Well, it is, and that's why governance has to be driven by strategy, long-term strategy, and ongoing monitoring of that, so that it does achieve what's needed.
Because that review, because in my time in education, every individual in that space that has a disability, they're all unique too. It's not like it's a blanket, you know what I mean? It's not blanket. So it's not, they're under symptoms and conditions and I don't know what the categories could be in that space, but, neurodiversities and things like that. But actually, it's very hard to review when we know that every individual is very different.
Yeah, so you're reviewing, your strategy, your focus, your goal, what is the purpose? What are you trying to achieve? I think so. Governance has to have that lens, always, and to cycle back to the people that are actually in the space working with those students, and that's where governance needs to get their understanding from, so they can continue to drive, policy, direction, strategy that's relevant. And you can only get the relevance by reviewing and getting the feedback. So in my experience, maintaining that review cycle is not always present in all governance structures.
Yeah, I think I think maybe when we look at our own structures and when we're looking at responding with children that have differing learning needs, and seeing that as an opportunity to gain some deeper level of understanding when it comes to working with children in that space and their whānau. I mean, remember, again, I've spoken about it, we're catching it earlier, but that also means we're dealing in I don't know what the wording is exactly here, but for sometimes grief and a realisation. A realisation, actually we didn't plan on this. Are you sure? There is moments of shift between whānau where they're in a holding pattern of realisation, and we're trying to influence opportunities for our teaching team to increase opportunity for success or probability of success, and then also working with the whānau. One's accepting and we want to work in and make a plan, and one person's not. The product we're presented with in that space, we can review that, because what we can do is we can look at it and say, Shivers, how was our approach there? Did we engage the right services at the right time, or could we build our own services to meet that need? But if we don't have that review, then we're just blowing money.
Yep.
Like, we'd close our doors, Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, the diversity space really does have I do hold a bit of a special place in my heart for it, because I know the struggles for whānau in that space. Yes, it's more widely publicised, but it's still very, very old, backwards in how we really want to enable those young people to and set them up for success.
Yeah, well, I agree. And just with my own experience with my own children, coming to terms with what you're learning about your children is a difficult journey, only because we've become conditioned to think that there's sort of a normal, normal pathway.
Yes.
But so I think some of the answer is in that. It's like, removing the normal and just exposing all of the pathways that are available to all of the people, and because we've all got our own different journey that we're going to take.
Yes.
And
disability or not.
So what is normal?
Yes.
Normal is we're all normal in our own way, and we've all got our own journey that needs some support somewhere, somehow. So,
I've been fascinated in the advent of the Māori lens in this space too.
Yep.
My son works for Te Kaho Health over there in Hamilton, and the Māori lens has been almost contradictory to Western Pākehā approaches. Although he's only given me small tidbits, it's been quite a fascinating journey for me to hear, because he's working for the same trust that I was working for, but on the Māori side.
Yeah.
Right, which is just ironic, because when he got the role, I was like, hey, is that with? So hearing his approach and how they approach clients, especially coming out of school or transitioning out of different regions, out of different trusts, what those challenges look like and present, and then how the Māori lens immerses them in verse that. What's been your thoughts on some of that? Maybe some of that approach that has really come to the forefront in these treatment spaces.
Yeah, well, so I've been involved not so much in the disability space yet, in terms of being able to really participate fully, providing my Māori lens to that conversation. But for whatever reason, that space is not quite there, in my view. But I certainly have had a lot of experience in education for a Māori, applying a Māori lens to the matters of issue for us in education. And I see a real shift. Well, I saw a real positive shift in the last 5 years in the education sector to acknowledge, learn and understand more about that Māori perspective on all matters. So that's given me a lot of confidence. And then now my journey has taken me into the council space, and looking into the council space and the application of our Māori lens on all of those matters, I'm quite confident that there's a positive intention there.
Yes.
And really what I see is just a whole lot of need to support each other, to have that, to go on that journey in a way that enables people to engage without having concern about how they engage or to what extent they can. And
the Māori lens it's fascinating to me, because I was brought up Māori but without the language.
Yeah.
Right, my kōrero fluent, very prominent, but my mum and none of the kids had the language.
Yeah.
My nan did not like the language.
Yep.
But she'd passed away by the time I was born, but she had put into the kids, forget the language.
Yeah.
And then, but I was still brought up Māori. I still went to the marae. I remember graduating from the kitchen to the hole digging. I remember all that stuff. And actually, I carried a lot of shame in spaces, yet I also carried that lens with me through a lot of my own practice here and overseas. Yeah. That again, that manaki, that whakawhanaungatanga, we talk about I was good at relationships. Well, that's because that's what I was brought up around.
Yep.
Oh, you're a good speaker. No, I was brought up around the
Yep.
speaking. Oh, you like to spin yarns. Yeah, no, I was brought up around that too. The Māori lens in your space when you're coming in and applying that, how do you help people understand that it is safe, that it is authentic, and that it can carry us forward?
Yeah. So for me, one of the biggest things I like to share with whoever it is I'm supporting into that space is that we're people. You and I were just people, you know, with some different backgrounds, but actually we're people trying to understand each other and move forward, whatever it is we've got to move forward. And I know that, you know, because I'm actually dealing with groups of people right now and supporting them to engage. So groups of council workers to engage with mana whenua. And I find that one of the biggest barriers they have is just a real fear of just taking that first step. And I think it's because they forget that we're just the same, we're just people, you know, with some difference in backgrounds and understanding. So I attempt to just break down that initial barrier and help people to just see each other as people first, with some values that come through that we can both benefit from.
Yep.
Um,
And sit around the table and still have that kōrero.
and just still have that kōrero. And I think it does sort of open up that opportunity to sort of relax a little more and think, actually, so often I get asked, well, how do I start that relationship or that engagement? And I'll say, well, how do you start a normal relationship or engagement? You know, you've got to talk to them. You just say who you are, and you know, and just start that journey. But there's such a fear of getting it wrong. People fear getting it wrong and offending people. So lots of goodwill and intent in that.
Yes.
But they just stifled a little around how to start that, and I think it's because they forget again that we're just people.
We're just people.
Yeah, we're just people. We all have values that are similar or not, but you know. And
that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
As long as we respect it. Yeah, we show respect. I agree. And in this space for which is an exciting space in the council. So you're running for, is it a Papamoa or Arataki?
Arataki. So I'm standing as a General Ward candidate for the Arataki community, which actually has caused some interesting discussions in itself, the name of the ward.
Yes.
So Arataki Ward, for the purpose of the elections, begins at Girvan Road.
Yes.
And ends at Domain Road. But when I speak to anyone who considers themselves from Arataki, they struggle with the boundaries that have been put in place, and that's the struggle they stay with when I'm trying to talk to them about the council and elections, because it goes deep to them. They don't understand how they've lived in what they call Arataki all of their life, and now there's some lines that are showing them differently, and they're required to vote for people who have a different part of the community. So it's actually caused lots of conversations around identity and Arataki. But so I've been born and bred in Matapihi, and we say in Matapihi that we naturally flow into Arataki. If you come to Matapihi and you come to the end of Matapihi Road, we're flowing right into Arataki, and that's always been the case. That's where our locals are. So even for Matapihi, we're not a part of Arataki in this election. We've been placed in the Mowal ward, which is just, again, another one of those nuances that sort of cause people to stumble in the discussion, and then they get caught on that.
That's confusing.
Well, it's important, and I think actually, and I did raise it with the commissioners, because candidates are able to have time with the commissioners before they left to get some advice and ask some questions. And that was actually one of my questions, was around the determination of the boundaries for the wards for election, because I would say that actually it causes some unnecessary angst, and perhaps because the commissioners were unaware of the local view of their place of belonging.
Because I remember issues being in and around the school zoning.
Yeah.
And saying to iwi, well, hang on, no, you can't go to that school even though that's in your rohe. And
Yes.
Well, hang on. Hang on a minute.
Right.
I remember that scenario.
And it still is.
Yeah, quite vividly.
And it's just because, places like council or ministry, they have their own reasons for putting boundaries in place.
Yes.
But I think possibly they've missed the education piece where they bring the community along with that.
Yes.
So that we understand and we're not already like up in arms when we hear that you're putting us in a ward that might not necessarily reflect resonate with where you think you identify or belong.
And what are you hoping to achieve should you be elected?
Yeah, to bring the true voice of the community forward to that table, and get what the community are asking for in the best way possible. I mean, I do have priorities, and one of them, the main priority, is really housing affordability. I'm aware that Tauranga has not got a lot of ability to spread any longer unless some big parcels of land are unlocked, and that's a difficult situation. So, housing affordability in Tauranga is going to look vertical as well. So while it may need to look vertical, my view is that we've got to have opportunities for everyone still. And so I would definitely look to support the development or the entrenchment of policies that enable affordable housing as well as intensification.
It's funny because housing is supply and demand. It's such a... It's not hard to understand how this works.
No.
If there's not enough supply, the price goes up. I don't know why we have to campaign on that.
Nor do I.
I love it, and we're certainly supporting that space because it's just like, but we've got to get parts. I know Spence and what they're trying to do for Māori to get all the it makes sense. We know that, and then when we look at geographically or the geopolitical scenes in other places in the world, and where countries have done well to, like we lived in Doha, Qatar, and their desire to open up land was front and center. They were like, let's open up land fast. So that it drove everything down. I remember being there and the rents were sky high. And then they opened up massive, and it was crazy to watch in real time. I mean, they have the money to do that fast. But it was crazy in real time seeing it plummet. And it was quite fascinating to watch. That is a really important piece in the election spaces. And I know that your work and your voice in that is going to be shared by many.
Well, I have an intimate understanding of the tangata whenua, mana whenua view of all of development in our city, because for the last 20 years I've been involved in Raupatu and moving forward from Raupatu and having a vested interest in what's happening from a mana whenua point of view. So I've sat on what's called Te Rangapu Mana Whenua, which is a collective of 17 iwi and hapu across all of Tauranga, and down to Waitaha, Tapuika and Te Arawa. The benefit is huge of being able to be in that forum, because that forum is an opportunity for all of council projects to come and report initially as a consultation with mana whenua on all of their projects. So over those years, I've developed a clear and comprehensive understanding of the issues that mana whenua put forward, the pressures on the taiao, land issues within mana whenua, as well as, the encroaching of different development issues. So of being, you know, a part of the group that's understood and being presented with all of that information, it leads me now to be able to really add value at the table in discussions around unlocking potential opportunities for housing, for example, because I understand schools, all of it, because I understand where the land is. That's so the majority of land now in Tauranga is only Māori land left.
Schools.
Schools.
It's hard seeing. That's my passion area, and it's hard seeing kids just jammed into areas. You know, like I really,
Well, I think that's actually probably a good opportunity for partnership and collaboration because, you know, I understand from a Māori perspective that our people are key, in particular our rangatahi. And so the opportunity to have those discussions and actually to partner at the high level to provide, you know, land, to make land available for
I mean, it's just part of my opinion around this is entirely my opinion, I guess, but when you're seeing higher levels of school violence happening, if you jam and put kids in front of each other and on top of each other, you are asking for trouble.
Yeah.
Like
well, it's certainly not helping the situation, that's for sure.
And I know what it's like when you've got whānau coming to visit in your house and you're like, get out. If you put kids in that scenario, you are asked. Now, no, are we going to build schools of old when there were just gigantic fields and, you know, no.
Yeah.
But we've got to think harder about that because that is a recipe for disaster. Because I know personally, having people in my space too long is not for me, let alone a teenage boy or girl going through the hardest period of their life in puberty and all that sort of stuff, and then just living on top and being in little nooks and crannies. That is not conducive.
No, I mean, that coupled, you know, along with all of the other challenges that they have. Correct.
It's the last straw.
It is.
If you're coming from whānau in the space that there's horrible things happening at home and you haven't got enough kai on the table and you're scrapping with your brother who's borrowed your jersey and ripped it playing rugby and then you go into school and then some little Joe sits in your seat that you were sitting at, then all of a sudden it's a complete change. And I've seen that model in schools happen too often, and it can change the complete path of a child. No,
I agree. And some of the unfortunate sides of that is that schools don't always have the ability to control the flow.
No, they don't.
You know?
And that's why we've got to, this is why I see these conversations as being critical, because controlling the flow is very hard if we open up green fields, but we don't have the necessary. It's like us. People think we're mad for opening up early childhood centres within kaui of each other, but actually whānau need it. We wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Otherwise we'd close the doors. Yeah. You know, we have to try to figure that out for whānau to meet the need of what's going on. Yeah. Schools. Oh, schools. I know. Well, look, Andrea, I think it's a valid piece. I love that you're in the arena. It's something I'm probably not game enough to do in this stage. I've probably got too much voice. I don't know. It's cool.
Everyone's got their time.
Trouble. But I do really wish you luck in that space. Now let's just get this about the voting. So everyone should have received their papers.
Well, from the 29th of June onwards, voting papers were starting to be delivered.
Sure. And you can go, where are those ballots? Where do they put the ballots?
So if you have received your voting paper, there's places like the library and the supermarkets that have orange ballot boxes that you're able to just put your envelope into, or you can post it.
Yeah, yes.
So into the New Zealand Post boxes.
And we really encourage whānau to get out and do that. I mean, it's important. It's an important part as we come back around from having a commission in play to now putting people elected back into that space. Yeah. And Andrew, I really appreciate the mahi in that space and what you're doing. Again, you're in the arena, and instead of moaning, you're in there trying to get in there and be involved. And we really wish you luck.
Thank you.
And hopefully we see your name come out of that. Well, I don't know how it's announced, but
it's going to come out one way or another.
But we hope to see your name in that space and see some real decent change in our city.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you, Andrea.
Appreciate that.
Awesome. Wicked.